Hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With, the Siemens podcast that delves into the role of technology in driving sustainable economies. My name is Tumi and I am your host. Today we're discussing the just energy transition. We're in conversation with Sabine Dall'Omo, who is the CEO of Siemens Sub-Saharan Africa, and Desmond Mabilo, a systems engineer for Siemens Sub-Saharan Africa, to help us unpack this topic. Sabine and Desmond, welcome to the podcast. The concept of a just energy transition is more than just about shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. It's about ensuring that this transition is equitable and inclusive and benefits all segments of society. In today's discussion, we'll break down what a just energy transition means, why it's crucial for both the environmental and social justice. Sabine, let me start with you. Can you provide an overview of South Africa's current energy landscape, as well as the unique challenges that the country is facing in the energy transition?
Sure. Yeah. Well, great having you here. And welcome, Desmond. Look, when we view into the South African energy mix, then we will have two major dilemmas. One is that our energy from the national grid is largely contributed by coal-fired power stations, and that's more than 80% of our electricity is currently produced through coal-fired power stations, which have their respective emissions of CO2 and other emissions. Then we have a situation that we have a good proposition on renewable energy, namely in the Eastern Cape, in the Western Cape, but also in the Northern Cape. And however, the energy demand with regards to industrial operation is largely in the northern part of the country, there where currently the power stations are. What means if we want to get more renewable electricity onto the grid and be used in industrial application, we will need to invest significant into transmission and distribution activity, so which is quite costly because in the past it was not really needed. And then we have quite a bit of renewable energy already out of the various rounds, which in the Independent Power Producer Program, or REAP, Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program, have been awarded since 2012 and connected to a great extent already to the grid. Plus, the president has waived the electricity licensing cap in August 2022, which makes it possible for any private company or private person to have their own electricity being produced on site, which is essential for many industrial companies because there they can see what their carbon emissions in the ESG contributions for their commitments globally are.
Desmond, what's been Siemens' role in addressing the energy challenges and how is it contributing to the broader just energy transition goals?
Yeah, thank you, Tumi. I'm very happy to be here to discuss this topic with you. So Siemens is a technology company. It's very strong in the area of electrification, digitalization, and automation. So technologies that are involved in the just energy transition, it's something that Siemens is very strong with. For example, technologies that you need to be able to implement renewable technologies, you find them within Siemens. So really, Siemens is in a very good position to actually support the country in moving towards this just energy transition initiative. For example, in Siemens smart infrastructure business, we've got technologies such as integration to, Sabine spoke about integration to the transmission network. We've got switch gears, we've got protection relays that enable the country to be able to integrate to those transmission lines. But then we also have technologies such as microgrids, which play a vital role in terms of transitioning to this new energy initiative.
You've just touched on the microgrid solution, and I know that we have a project in Upper Blinkwater, which is a significant initiative at Siemens. Can you describe its impact on the community and how it fits into South Africa's integrated resource plan that Sabine just touched on?
Yes, yeah, the Upper Blinkwater project is quite an interesting project. It is a community that never had access to electricity. So implementing solutions such as a microgrid actually was the best thing that could have been done for that community. For example, Sabine mentioned the limitation in terms of getting transmission lines to remote communities such as Upper Blinkwater. So without transmission lines, it means they do not have access to the energy that Eskom, our utility, is actually providing to the country. Microgrids is described, it's a microgrid which is independent. It can be independent from the grid, or it can also interface to the grid. But in the case of Upper Blinkwater, the grid is actually remote, so it's an island type of solution. So in that situation, they had PV, solar PV, which is very free from the sun, and then they also had battery storage and also had diesel generator. And that diesel generator is really for backup purposes, because what we want to do in this just energy transition, we are considering the effects on climate change. So we rely mainly on the solar PV, battery storage, and also wind, which is also a very good environment for that community to be able to use wind. Now, in terms of the impact that that solution had to that community, as I mentioned, they never had access to electricity. There's young kids that are growing up in that community, so studying at night was really quite a challenge before. You needed a candle, which causes some other hazards such as fire and the likes. Now, looking at things like when we look at climate change, how the people used to cook, for example, in that community, they used to go to the bushes, collect firewood, and, burning that wood as well is also not good for the environment because there's smoke everywhere. So now with electricity, they are able to cook, with electricity, they are able to boil water. Young kids are able to now have access to things like the internet, because cell phones are now readily available, even laptops. So kids can be able to plug in to access the internet, for their educational purposes. So really that project is going to have a significant, in fact, it is having a significant impact to that community because it has really just moved them ahead quite many years.
It actually sounds like Upper Blinkwater. I'm not sure where it is. It sounds remote, slightly remote. I'm not sure. How do you then handle maintenance in remote areas like that?
Siemens technologies are quite interesting, and because we are able to remotely connect to that environment to see what is the current status of the microgrid there. If there's any issues, our SCADA systems, it's able to give us some errors that there's some issue there. But also, the project was done in collaboration with the municipality that side. So those errors are also accessible by the community there. People from the municipality can easily go to the site and resolve that particular issue, or we can support them remotely. If the issue is more advanced, an engineer from Siemens is able to fly there. But the nice thing is that we are able to identify these errors early because the system can be accessed remotely.
In what ways, Sabine, is digitalization transforming South Africa's energy sector, particularly in terms of optimizing energy infrastructure and reducing costs?
Desmond already alluded to a few of the technologies which we have in place, and clearly, the microgrid and the way we have applied technology at, for instance, that site is essential because it also helps us to tap into these remote assets and help them with some technical complications. So Desmond, for instance, could tap into their system if there are any settings which need to be adjusted. And I do believe with the additional digital capacity being available in South Africa, we have many more opportunities. But let me look at some of the topics which we see particular in the municipalities, because when we talk about electricity, we always think about Eskom only, but Eskom only transmits to a selected amount of customers. And then when you live in the bigger municipalities like Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, but also in Durban, you will get your electricity from the municipality, and they are, like for instance, City Power are in charge for the substations bringing electricity to your house. And here in the past, a lot of investment did not take place, a lot of maintenance took not place, and so there is quite a number of, for instance, substation protection equipment which is digital solution driven, which can be installed in order to make it more effective if there is load shedding, if there is a trip, if, for instance, there's lightning and there was a power surge. And so we would be able, if we roll it out in all the substations, to get a clearer picture also for the city, when to deploy technicians or manage it from their control center. And that's not only here, but it's same valid for the countries outside, which are seeing that investing into the transmission and distribution, and namely into the distribution grid, is very important, because when you don't have the assets available, it's also difficult to collect revenue, right?
You touched on the integrated resource plan a little bit earlier. Do you think we're advancing fast enough to achieve the IRP goals?
Well, quite clearly not, because they also have been set out in 2011, and we had quite a number of delays, particular between 2014 until 2018 when it was restarted. And currently we see also further delays, because when we had a kickstart of round 5, there was a high optimism in the market. But with COVID and the increase in resource prices, for instance, on copper, steel, but also cement, it led to a fact that the price offered per kilowatt hours by the IPP can't be any more cost competitive, and hence we haven't found a solution yet on how to get over that bidding process to have any non-competitive propositions made, which potentially could be challenged and then lead even to further delays. So from that part, we're currently not really on track. But if we see how much electricity has been generated specifically in the load shedding times of the last year, then a lot of private people and companies have opted for solar installations, as we did at Siemens Park. And so that led to a significant reduction in emissions, but also in energy availability.
What initiatives, Desmond, is Siemens South Africa involved in to foster local talent and develop a skilled workforce that supports the country's energy transition?
In terms of Siemens, what has Siemens been trying to do for skills development? At Siemens, we have a program called Cement. So the Cement program identifies young students who are studying engineering. Siemens offers them bursaries. Very early in their university career, Siemens gives them the opportunity to get a mentor within Siemens. So an engineer, someone like me, would mentor some of those students, and they would come to Siemens during holidays to get exposure at that early stage on the different technologies that we have within Siemens. And those students are also given an opportunity to work for Siemens on an internship program. We had quite a number of students that have graduated now. Some of them are in their second year working for Siemens. And it's working very well, because those students are actually contributing in our project work. And that has really been very significant in terms of skill development in the country. But the other thing that Siemens does is, for example, in the Upper Blinkwater project, there is a very young engineers who started a company called Lamosola. Siemens supported them in terms of getting them exposed to the Siemens technologies, and there was also some support in terms of training them to be able to implement projects that are using Siemens technologies. And Siemens technologies, as I mentioned earlier, it's the best technologies globally. So when they get exposure to those solutions, they get exposure to global standards in terms of implementing this renewable projects in the country.
You've just highlighted Lamosola. I want to talk about community-led solutions and local innovations in advancing South Africa's energy transition, and what role Siemens plays in supporting these efforts. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, community-led solutions are very, very important. We'll go back again to the Upper Blinkwater project. We saw the need for that community to be able to have access to energy. Siemens coming into the party shows how Siemens is really interested in supporting communities. And that's really one of the core elements of this just transition, because, just refers to implementing solutions that will actually support the communities. It's not solutions that will actually leave the communities behind. In that initiative, we can see that Siemens really is for developing communities. And the other thing about the Upper Blinkwater project, I'm going back to it again, is that even the communities are given an opportunity to maintain that solution. It goes back to that skill development already. Kids in the community can use that solution as a reference project where in their classroom they can already learn about how renewable technologies work. So really, that's how Siemens is for community-led programs.
Sabine, I want to find out about some of the partnerships that exist between Siemens and other stakeholders, like government entities, in facilitating the progress towards a just energy transition in the country. Can you highlight a little bit about that?
For once, the Just Energy Transition Partnership is, first of all, a partnership between the South African government, the European Union, Germany, France, UK, and the US, by which there is a dedicated funding made available, in totality 8.5 billion US dollar, to help South Africa meet the CO2 reduction targets, specifically as we are so depending on coal-fired power station. That is a partnership, and they do stretch out, like for instance with Germany. With Germany, we have an energy partnership for quite a number of years where we exchange best practices between, how to perform an energy transition, just as Desmond outlined, just as incorporating the human resources within a transition. And so the worry is really also from a partnership point of view, where the German government, for instance, puts quite a lot of effort is in the human capital and the demographics, specifically with where our electricity is currently produced. But Siemens, being part of the German chamber and also German companies being active in the energy partnership here in South Africa, we work with the agencies of the German government, but also we call it the Gesellschaft for Collaboration, for Industrial Collaboration, GIZ, and they assist with certain research projects, and they also were a partner for us towards Upper Blinkwater. But there are also other funding agencies, for instance, KfW, which is equivalent to the IDC in South Africa, and the DEG, the German Development Bank for private businesses, which is also working with Siemens, making sure that we can tap into resources made available for the development of South Africa.
Are there any projects that have come out of these partnerships, anything that you can think of, maybe just one or two that you can highlight?
Yeah, one definitely, we spoke about it already, is Upper Blinkwater. We have quite a number of activities, particular where we work, for instance, with the Nepal Business Foundation, where they are the implementation agent for some of these government-led institutions, and where we then the technology partnership in these projects. So like, for instance, we have currently one we are negotiating is with the UK Pact for Sustainable Development of University Campuses in South Africa, and namely with regards to energy consumption. And they look at quite a host of universities all over the continent and the country to see how we are able to reduce their energy demand and make them green universities.
That's exciting. What would a green university look like?
Well, Siemens has a partnership with a university in the UK, and that's University of Birmingham, where we partnered up with them how to use electricity, first of all, generate electricity, but also specifically facility management, because you have a lot of buildings, a lot of electricity used for lighting, heating, air conditioning. There we have a nice reference site, which is a Siemens Smart Infrastructure site, which we also presented at one of our business conferences as the showcase. And looking at that we have such a great partnership, and the University of Birmingham, for instance, has a partnership with the University of Stellenbosch, we will be able to duplicate a very great lighthouse project from the UK under this UK PEC here in South Africa.
That sounds very exciting, Sabine. Desmond, what are some long-term impacts that you foresee from Siemens South Africa's initiatives on the country's energy sector and overall socioeconomic development?
South Africa is very determined, about this just energy transition. And as I mentioned earlier, Siemens is a technology company leader in technologies that are involved in microgrid, also technologies that are involved in much bigger projects like your wind generation. That already, you can see that, it's going to support the country significantly in terms of reaching its climate change goal, achieving this just energy transition initiative. From a technology point, Siemens really is in a very good position to make an impact in the country. And we are continuing to speak to different stakeholders within the country to support them in these programs. With this microgrids, it's actually, we also as Siemens, we are sort of leading this microgrid technologies from the front. We also have our own microgrid at our campus to show in the country that we are also determined in supporting the initiatives that they want to achieve. And of course, many other facilities, we are talking to them to also implement such solutions. So that's the impact that we see Siemens providing. And also with regards to skills development, there's initiatives in skills development, the Siemens program I spoke about, and the learning opportunity that exists for people like the kids in Upper Blinkwater, having to understand how renewable technologies work from a very early age, replicating those solutions in other communities. This is going to have a very huge impact in terms of the country, climate change, the awareness and the likes.
This is a very positive outlook, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that Siemens faces in its efforts to drive the energy transition and how, you're working towards addressing these challenges.
Challenges, currently, for example, and that's a challenge for everyone in the country. South Africa, it's a coal country. We've got quite a lot of coal resources in the country. The coal industry is employing quite a lot of people in South Africa. Implementing renewable solutions, people are concerned, are we going to shut down the power stations now? Where are people going to get the jobs? So those are some of the challenges that we have. But if you look at this renewable technologies that are coming up, they also bring opportunities, to the country. And it's opportunities that are accessible. For example, we spoke about Lamo Solar. It's a very small company that is involved in implementing renewable energy projects. That company is getting to employ people, and as we know, SME are actually a biggest contributor in the community in terms of reducing the unemployment number that we have in the country. So communicating such information that, renewable energy will introduce new opportunities for jobs. And it's very easy. For example, if there's a microgrid environment, there you've got smaller organizations that can participate in that program.
Is there like an openness to the change in dynamic from people who are in these coal-fired power stations looking at the opportunities in the renewable space? How open are people to these changes?
Without proper communication, there is resistance. Continuous communication on the opportunities that renewable technologies brings, that actually opens up. There is some resistance, but of course there is an opportunity that more communication needs to be delivered to the communities.
More communication, I think, education as well. Sabine, I just want to talk about the Pictures of Transformation report that was released this year by Siemens, and it highlights that South Africa could meet the energy demands of 95% of its population by 2040. What do you think the key steps are to reach that milestone?
Yeah, for once, as we look at the energy transition and specifically also the packages which are outlined in the Just Energy Transition, there is a strong shift from, for instance, coal-fired energy towards renewable energy. But there's also one aspect in which is hydrogen, a hydrogen master plan. And as we know, the biggest cost for the hydrogen production is the electricity you need in order to split off the hydrogen molecules from the water. It would make more sense to also use that electricity right away where it's happening. So we'll be able to see with a much stronger electricity shift towards renewables. And remember, when we discussed early on, we have more than 80% still coming from coal. So our grid can still get quite a bit of renewable energy into the mix before we will have significant swings in the availability. And so investing into these renewable technologies is absolutely vital, but also helping some of the industrial users to generate their own capacity. And for instance, like we did in a discussion with Anglo American for one of the platinum mines, not only providing electricity for their operation, green electricity in form of hydrogen or solar, but also connecting the community next to the operation onto, for instance, the Anglo grid to make sure that they get affordable electricity and hence then also foster economic development in mining regions.
What message would you like to convey to South African policymakers, industry leaders, citizens about the importance of supporting the country's journey towards sustainable energy future?
Well, for once, we cannot look at only one side of the coin, and we need to look at it holistically. And Desmond already outlined the worry about people losing jobs because unemployment is a real thing in South Africa other than in other regions which are transitioning into new energy forms. So whatever decision we are going to take as business, but also as government, we will need to do that in the context of considering the people working currently in these industries and providing real opportunities which are scalable. That would mean, as Desmond already alluded, we will be able to communicate good stories and hence gain the trust of, for instance, unions, but also employees, because only if everybody is convinced that's the right way, we will have a successful transition.
And Desmond, finally, how can our listeners, both locally and globally, get involved in supporting initiatives that promote a cleaner, more equitable energy future for South Africa?
Our communities, really, this message needs to be sent to our communities. For example, if you look at what is currently happening with our climate, we had floods, heavy rains. So the environment is really changing. So that message needs to be communicated to our communities. Try to get young kids, in school to already learn about climate change and also what initiatives can actually be implemented to reduce these challenges that we face due to climate change. And of course, as I mentioned, Siemens has a program called Cement, where young people who are interested in engineering, computer engineering, they can actually come to Siemens and they can get mentorship develop and grow a career in that field.
I think it's clear that the just energy transition is not just a technical shift, but a profound societal transformation. Thank you so much for joining me in studio and sharing your insights on this very important topic. That was Sabine Dall'Omo, CEO of Siemens Sub-Saharan Africa, and Desmond Mabilo, Systems Engineer for Siemens Sub-Saharan Africa. I've been your host, Buitumelo Masike. Please join me in the next episode as we tackle more pressing issues. Thank you.